name is Dr. Heather Katz. I am a professor of political science here at SWOSU, and I specialize in international relations.
My name is Dawson. I'm the social sciences TA at SWOSU right now. When I go forward to grad school and everything, my emphasis will be in Russian labor history.
My name is Samantha Cowan. I am a senior political science and psychology double major. I am currently the Psych Stats TA and tutor. I've taken a lot of international relations classes and just have a lot of interest in this. I plan to go to law school after this, so we'll see how that goes.
Okay, so last week, Russia invaded a sovereign nation of Ukraine. This is relatively unprecedented. We haven't had a major invasion of a European state by another one since World War II. So it's been over 70 years since we've seen the equivalent. And so the basic premise is that Russia's President Vladimir Putin is making an argument that there are a lot of cultural ties between the Ukraine and Russia, particularly that Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine, is actually the birthplace of both Russian and Ukrainian identity, and that he wants to recreate, not the Soviet Union per se, but recreate Russia's sphere of influence in Europe. And that means that the Ukraine, instead of joining the North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO, is instead going to be encouraged to be allies again with the Russian Federation. And so Ukrainians, a lot of them disagree. They have been fighting the attempt at the invasion. And so far, Russia has not been able to secure any of the major population areas. And it's going worse for Putin than I think he would have imagined. So that's a good start, I think.
Yeah. Not a lot of professional opinion is really known about this yet, since it's still such a new issue. But what largely seems to be speculation is that this was largely unplanned by Putin. This advance on his part was a total mess, and goals, even in his own press conferences, seem to be completely off the wall. There are open disagreements between himself and his men as to whether or not the goal of this war is to annex different parts of Ukraine, or to liberate them, quote unquote, and let them have independence, or humiliate Ukraine, so on and so forth. It seems like Putin has really been talking up this military conflict since 2014, and he's finally painted himself into a corner and lashed out.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I think this has been a long time coming, unfortunately, and it's something that, though we didn't want to agree that it was something that was coming, it definitely is unprecedented. I think this is something that needs to be highlighted as something that's important, because the violation of sovereignty of another nation is just something that's such a large norm in the international sphere that it's so egregious that it has been violated in such a way, and just completely ignoring the sovereignty and ruling power that the Ukrainian citizens should have over their own country, regardless of if they have cultural ties to Russia or not. They are still a sovereign nation, and they still deserve to decide whether or not they want to be part of Russia or not, and they were never allowed that choice.
Right, so one of the things that you mentioned, sovereignty is one of the strongest norms in international relations, and that goes along with self-determination, that the people can decide for themselves what kind of government they want. And that would be the equivalent of Canada trying to tell the U.S. what to do. I mean, if the last time the U.S. was interfered with in Pearl Harbor to stay out of the war in the Pacific during World War II, it didn't end well for the Japanese and for the Axis war efforts. So generally speaking, sovereignty and self-determination are at the core of international relations. And this is why, at least in part, we see a lot of support for the Ukrainians amongst the world. Not every single country, but certainly most of the West, and a lot of traditionally neutral countries have been either outspoken or at least not in favor of what Putin is attempting to do.
And some of those declarations and actions by other countries against Putin are rather striking. For example, Germany is rearming itself for the first time since World War II, and is taking an open stance against Russia, despite the fact that 33% of their fuel currently comes from Russia. Sweden and Switzerland have both taken Ukraine's side, which both of those countries are traditionally extremely neutral. It's shocking, the fact that so many countries globally have come out against Russia in this war. And the sanctions that they're imposing on Russia have already been extraordinarily effective. The ruble is about the value of a penny right now.
Yeah.
So their economy is not doing well.
It's
Yeah.
been trashed,
I think it's
yes.
been devalued by about 20% is what I just read.
Yes.
But circling back to the idea of like sovereignty and how important of a norm that it is that I think you're discussing that Putin didn't think that this was something that would be responded to in such a way. But thinking of the way sovereignty is seen on an international scale, it's who would not want to take up arms, like ideologically or literally, against something so violating, if that makes sense? Who would want to let that pass happen? Who would allow Russia to just do that? I feel like it's almost a fault on Putin's part for not thinking how much of a norm that this is and how upheld it is. To
For me-
not think that the entire world would just be like, why would this be okay?
For me, Putin was believing his own story, in a sense, his own narrative, that the Ukrainians would embrace, at least some of them, would embrace the Russians as saviors and liberators. I think part of him sincerely believed that, and boy, was he wrong. As another thing I would want to mention to students and others who are watching this, that there has been concern raised, legitimate concern about Russia's high alert status in terms of its nuclear weapons. We were just talking about that today in class. But nuclear weapons, as much as a person, I am personally scared of anyone who's waving around weapons such as that. International relations theory tells us that deterrence means that it's unlikely to actually be ever used. Nuclear weapons have not been used since 1945, when only one country, the United States, had them. Since then, they have acted as a way in which to force states to do something that they otherwise would not do. And so it forces, in this case, in the Ukrainian case, that Russia is waving around its nukes as an attempt to keep Western interference at a minimum, and that there's no U.S. or other European troops on the ground in Ukraine. So I can't imagine a rationale for using them. If the goal is to make Russia a grand empire again, bombing the jewel of the Ukraine, Kiev, for example, would be irrational and would result in nothing. Everyone loses. And again, I want to encourage, of course, don't take it lightly, but I don't know, I think it's a bluff.
This is part of the core of the issue, though, in that a lot of people, as they're calling for intervention in Ukraine, are forgetting that we still need to play by Cold War rules. That the second that a U.S. soldier fires a weapon at a squadron of Russian soldiers, we're right back on the path of mutually assured destruction. And that is a very thin line to walk on.
Mm-hmm. And this is why I think we see, in addition to Biden's foreign policy failures in Afghanistan, why we see him maybe being very light-footed here.
Yes.
So those two things together.
Yeah, I for sure agree. I think the caution, though it was like very criticized in the American media and just by people around the world, seeing it as weak on the part of Biden. I also understand via our history how much he would want to be cautious around this issue. And I agree that using deterrence and the idea of that is, I think, is very strong. I don't think we need to worry too much. It is something that we need to be cautious and conscious of, but I don't think that's an active threat. I think it is very much showing the big guns, showing that he's still powerful, and showing that he still has control over this situation, and he's not letting up on it. I think it's a last-ditch effort to hold on to that power.
It is interesting that just today they had started talks about a ceasefire in Belarus, but at the same time inviting Belarus to join the Russians in the fight. So it really does appear Putin is trying to have his cake and eat it too, that he's trying to find some sort of diplomatic solution while simultaneously still trying to come out looking like a winner. And that's very important for his domestic approval ratings and his domestic legitimacy. A lot of this was predicated on him having a lower approval rating, and the COVID numbers in Russia had climbed a lot in recent weeks. And so what better way to make a leader legitimate and a hero in the eyes of his people than to win a war?